joke of a man who steps into the street and manages to catch a taxi that just happens to be driving by at the right moment. He gets into the taxi, and the cabbie says, "Perfect timing. You're just like Moshe." Who? Moshe Cohen. There's a guy who did everything right. Like my coming along when you needed a cab. It would have happened like that to Moshe every single time. The passenger remarks that there are always a few clouds over everybody and that nobody is perfect. Not Moshe, says the taxi driver. He was a terrific athlete. He could have gone on the pro tour for tennis. He could golf with the best of them. He sang like an opera baritone, and he danced like a Broadway star. He was something, huh? Yeah, he had a memory like a computer. He could remember everybody's birthday. He knew all about wine. He knew which fork to eat with. He could fix anything, not like me. I change a fuse and the whole neighborhood goes dark. No wonder you remember him, says the passenger. Well, I never actually met Moshe, the cabbie explains. Then how do you know so much about this person? To which the cabbie replies, I married his widow. Moshe Cohen's widow aside, what qualities in a person make that person truly admirable? All of us know people of distinction who have achieved impressive successes even though they started out with little. When we hear of a person who has started with nothing and triumphed despite all odds, we naturally wonder, how do they do it? How does a Holocaust survivor like Andy Grove, for example, become the chairman of Intel Corporation? Or how does a musician like Yitzhak Perlman, who had polio as a child and can hardly walk onto a stage, rise to such stardom? There are numerous accounts of people in every field imaginable who picked themselves up from the lowest depths and then prospered. They did it, to borrow a phrase from Elie Wiesel, when everything in history was against them. What makes these men tick? What powerful force allows them to accomplish such great things in spite of the tremendous disadvantages that stand in their way? To answer these questions, I think we need to look no further than the name of tonight's guest speaker. Let me explain what I mean by sharing an amusing family anecdote with you. This incident took place at around the time I first approached Governor Huckabee to be the guest lecturer at the 3rd annual Evelyn and Samuel Margolick Memorial Lecture. I excitedly told my 2 boys, who are 8 and 11 years old, that we had the opportunity of Mike Huckabee coming to speak at our synagogue. I must have said the governor's name repeatedly, Mike Huckabee. To their ears, it sounded like I was saying, my Maccabee. And they were just thrilled that they would finally have the opportunity to meet with a real live Maccabee. The Maccabees were a small band of heroes that lived 2,200 years ago and successfully resisted the mighty Syrian army. The Maccabees were not military men. They were not experienced in warfare. They had almost no military equipment. But to paraphrase one of Governor Huckabee's famous statements, they majored in miracles, not mathematics. They were few in number, and they were up against the most powerful military force that existed at that time. But they knew that their cause was just and true. They knew that they were fighting against an evil tyrant. And so they were able to draw upon unimaginable resources, and they overcame their numerically superior enemies. In a similar vein, our guest speaker tonight ran for President of the United States. He ran without the gigantic budgets available to his competitors. He ran without the large organizations that supported some of the other candidates. Yet despite these limitations, he garnered over 20% of the vote in the Republican primaries, putting him not far behind the Republican nominee John McCain, who received 39% of the vote. Besides all the other lessons that can be drawn from the governor's incredible electoral results, it is encouraging to think that a person can accomplish so much based on the force of their beliefs, their efforts, and their inner strengths. Another individual, who's a personal hero of mine, shares these very same characteristics. I'm, of course, referring to my dear friend and the generous sponsor of the Margalik Memorial Lecture, Lionel Margalik. Lionel is another inspiring example of a self-made man who worked his way up in the business world. Although he inherited his wisdom and his good looks from his parents, in whose memory we are holding tonight's event, his successes are his own. I think that it is relevant that this past year, Lionel was part of a consortium that purchased a Premier League British soccer team. The Lubavitcher Rebbe once compared the spherical soccer ball to the planet Earth. Just as the objective of a soccer game is to place the ball into a specific goal, so too the objective of mankind should be to bring the earth towards its intended purpose, which is to be a rectified world where everyone practices goodness and kindness. Standing in the way of the soccer team's objectives is the competing team. The ability of a team to score goals relies on their skill at overcoming the obstacles presented by the opposing team. The Maccabees of years gone by, the great heroes of our generation, the Holocaust survivors, who have begun their lives anew, the Arkansas governor that runs for president on a hope and a prayer, and the businessman who uses his successes to benefit others and to bring this world to a better place. All these remarkable personalities share the same characteristics. They apply their vision and determination to the goal of making much from little. I will shortly hand over the floor to the president of our synagogue, Mr. Nachum Siegel, who in the course of running our shul is no stranger to the idea of making much from little. Before I ask Nachum to formally introduce Lionel, I would like to conclude with a joke that I believe sums up the message that I wish to convey this evening. This joke is about Jack, the smart businessman, and how he accomplished his impossible goals. Jack talks to his son, and he says, "I want you to marry a girl of my choice." His son responds, "I'll choose my own bride, thank you." Jack explains, "But this girl is Bill Gates' daughter." His son says, "Well, in that case." Next, Jack approaches Bill Gates. He tells him, "Do I have a husband for your daughter?" Bill Gates responds, "But my daughter's too young to marry." Jack explains, "But this young man is vice president of the World Bank." Bill Gates says, in that case." Finally, Jack goes to see the president of the World Bank. Jack tells him, "I have a young man to be recommended as a vice president." The president responds, "But I already have more vice presidents than I need." Jack explains, "Yes, but this young man is Bill Gates' son-in-law." The president says, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, our dedicated president, Mr. Nachum Siegel.